Paul, at 6 o'clock.
Okay, you ready to go? All right. And people may join us as they can. And welcome, commissioners. And I see our county clerks there and the county treasurer, who I will not mistake for somebody else this time around. Hello and thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. County attorney. Sorry, Paul.
Oh, I did it again. Well, let's keep the streak going.
All right.
Let's keep the streak going. Does everybody have their agenda pulled up? Of course they do. And I wanted to, folks, I know this is a work session, but I just wanted to quickly peruse that because we've got a request or a need more than it is a request to see if everyone is all right with adding just one little item, not for a vote or anything, and it's something that Commissioner Gosar reminded me of, which is that we have had some discussions about some cooperation with the county on a shared grant writer researcher position. Does everyone know what I'm referring to? And I was going to give Commissioner Gosar or Commissioner Ibarra, I'm not sure which one of those commissioners is going to speak to it, but just a moment to just kind of check in with us about that at some point on this agenda. City Clerk.
Mayor, number 4 on your work session agenda does include that job sharing.
Oh, great. There it is. It's right there on the agenda. Well, so Chairman Gosar, that helps us out a little bit because it's already there and we don't need to do anything else about it. Okay. That being said, then I think we'd probably like to move into the first portion of what we have on our agenda tonight, which is the presentation regarding the Wyoming Department of Transportation. And I don't know who is here to kick us off on that necessarily.
Mayor, it appears like Jordan is with us, Jordan Ashes, if you remember her from.
I do. And I'm going to say welcome, Jordan. And yeah, sure can.
Technology. Awesome. Hi. Should we share our presentation on our screen, or I wasn't sure how you guys usually do it.
I think what we typically do is if you can provide the city clerk with the presentation, if it's a slideshow or something that we can step through, we'll usually have.
Think I did send that, but it might have been as a PDF. So do you need me to pull it up?
I'll check with the city clerk and see what you would like us to do. City clerk.
Mayor, just of note, Vice Mayor Pierce is raising her hand, but Jordan, I have made you a co-host. So if you prefer to share it, that's fine. Otherwise, I would be happy to share it.
Let me check with the Vice Mayor and Councilor Somerville to make sure it wasn't something else besides related to the presentation. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, sorry, I may be looking at the wrong agenda, but I see public comments prior to the YDOT update.
Yes. Yeah, always. Let's check and make sure.
I don't see that.
Folks,
it's on here. I'll send it to you. It's on the city's agenda. There's a slightly different than ours.
yeah.
Really? Well, let's just go with ours since they can't hear us anyway.
Oh, we can hear you. We can hear you. I'm gonna speak to this, council members. This is something that has become a reoccurring issue, and when we share a joint meeting with the commissioners, I don't know that it's really appropriate for us to impose our particular standards for the way we run meetings on these joint meetings. We've done it, but it is out of protocol for the commissioners. But they're nice, and they're going to let us check with the public and see if we have comment. But it does speak.
I don't know. I take offense to that tonight.
But it does speak to the council's issue to need to review some things in our rules and procedures, including our, frankly, copious agenda spots for public comment. in my solitary opinion as a member of the council. Let's take a look and see if there's anybody from the public that would like to ask questions about this right now. There might be some later after we get into the presentation, which is typically how the public comment goes, which is then, I think, when we're going to maybe have some valuable comments, input, and questions. I don't see any. City Clerk, do you? Okay. How about, folks, now we go to our patient presenters, and we thank you folks from the Department of Transportation, and we're ready for you. Without any other delay. City Manager, give me a thumbs up if you're ready, if we're ready to go. Okay, fantastic. We've got this.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm trying it. How did that work?
Well.
The presentation?
Hey, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
Council,
Yep.
thank you for letting us talk to you tonight about our upcoming projects for YDOT. Go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm Ralph Tarango. I'm the district engineer for Southeast Wyoming. And that's basically Albany, Carbon, and Laramie counties. And I took over for Tom DeHoff in November. And Jim Espy is our transportation commissioner for this district. And this is our district staff. Tim Morton's the district maintenance engineer. Wes Bybee the district construction engineer. Mike Simmons was just promoted to captain a couple weeks ago. Jesse Burgess, he's the equipment supervisor. Ryan Shields is our traffic engineer. He's here with us. And Jordan Knox, and she's the one that helped me put this presentation together. And these are the people that live here in Laramie, the people you guys see, boots on the ground. We have two resident engineers, Steve Cook and Corey Kramer. And our maintenance guys are Eric Anderson, Brett Baker, and Al Branscombe. So we're going to just kind of give you an overview of what's going on in YDOT and some of the challenges we face. We'll give you some SIP development, and then really what we want to do is we need public input. And that's what we're trying to do here. And then we'll give you some next steps too.
Sounds good.
This is our purpose, mission, vision, and values. And, you know, we got a new director a couple years ago, and anytime we have a new director, we get a new mission. But it's pretty much the same as it's always been. We want to make sure we have a safe transportation and effective transportation system. And I'm not going to read everything because I know you guys have a busy agenda. And so you're going to kind of get the abridged version of this so you guys can get on to other business.
I did send the slides, though, so if anyone does want to take a deeper look and has any questions, just let me know.
So our goals, you know, one thing that we're going to have throughout this presentation is the safety. We want to make sure our employees get home safe at night, and also, you know, that our projects are safe for the traveling public. Here's our guiding principles, and these are these are in priority. And so the top three there, I kind of want to go over just a little bit. Of course, number one, we want to stay in budget. And of course, we want to, safety is a big thing, as I said previously. And also, you know, we are in asset preservation here at YDOT, so we're just trying to preserve the assets that we have. And I'll go over some of that stuff later on how we're doing that. And then also, you know, if you can see there, our last priority on the list here is to address mobility and capacity issues. So YDOT has several assets that we have to maintain. You know, our highways, we have 6,700 miles of highways, 6,000 bridges, 42,000 culverts, and so on. I guess one thing I do want to bring up is our bridges, a lot of our bridges are at the end of their design life. The interstate was built in late 60s, early 70s, and that's about 50 years ago. And we've done several overlays on all our bridges. And so now we're past the point of doing overlays on them. We can't do overlays on a bunch of them anymore. And we either have to replace the deck or replace the bridge itself. And that's, you know, one of the reasons we're going to be doing Curtis Street here later on. And Wes Bybee will be kind of explaining that project to you in the future here. So YDOT has several programs underneath us. We have engineering and planning. They do our plans, our construction. They do a contract administration to make sure we follow all state and federal guidelines. our maintenance department, snow control, they maintain our assets. I guess I do want to point out, you know, we have rotaries in District 1. And we have a pretty aging fleet. That rotary, as you see there on the slide, is a 1983 rotary. And them rotaries are between $600,000 and $700,000 to replace. We're going to try to replace some of them this year. And also on the slide there, you can see one of our wrecked snow plows. And our snow plows, you know, we had over 20 snow plows get hit this year. And when a snow plow gets hit, we don't have additional money to buy a new snow plow. So what we have to do is we have to keep an old snow plow for longer. And we keep our snow plows for about 350,000 miles. But we do have a bunch of snow plows out there that are over 400,000 miles just because we don't have the money to replace them. Our facilities, there's over 500 facilities within the state that we maintain. In District 1, we have about 100. We have traffic and ITS. Ryan's here with our traffic program. He can explain a little bit on what our traffic program does.
Yeah, you know, just basically maintaining all the traffic assets on the highway, you know, what you would expect, signs, striping, traffic signals, and then some other more specific things like speed studies, access management, that kind of thing. We also try to take kind of a proactive approach when we can and look for future safety projects, you know, intersections that are dangerous or that have a crash history that may need correcting. So, you know, if any of those cross your radar, you know, a city intersection that also involves the state highway, you know, let us know. We want to take a look at it and be involved.
And then also on the ITS part of that, we have our overhead VMS signs. We have our WIS station, our road weather information system, and then also our variable speed limits. And then you can see there we have a WiLink system. WIDOT maintains the WiLink system throughout the state. And not only do we use that, but also other emergency services use that throughout the state. We have a 24-hour TMC. They're kind of our information conduit. So all the information that goes out on the roadway goes through our TMC. They also manage our road condition website, the 511. And then if you go to our 511 website, you'll see all our construction projects and all our overwidth load restrictions. And also they're the ones that push out, you know, when there's road closures. And, you know, if you're part of WAT or something like that, then they push that stuff out too. So WIDOT's kind of unique. Nationwide, a lot of our programs don't have patrol and aeronautics. We have a wide range of programs that are under us that are not under other state agencies. We also have driver services, compliance investigation, motor vehicles, and support programs, you know, like our local government programs. And so this slide here shows our revenue and buying power. And that red line kind of shows that our buying power isn't quite as good as it used to be. It's going down. And also, I wanted to point out here that there is a few spikes in here, 2010, 2015, and 2021. And them spikes in that is basically stimulus money that we did receive from the federal government. So far this year, we've led about 75 projects at about $219 million. And our projects also, you know, cost of our projects for our simple two-lane overlays ranges is around $200,000 a mile. And to reconstruct an interstate highway, it's around $4 million a mile to do that. And so it's quite expensive. And also, you know, every year we do give about $70 million, or part of our budget is about $70 million to counties and cities. So WIDOT did hire a consultant firm to do a study on our needs. I can't read the number there but I know it. But anyway, so this is basically what WIDOT needs annually to maintain the assets that we have. And as you can see there, surface transportation, we're about $200 million, and we have about a $354 million shortfall just to maintain what we have. So due to budget constraints too, we had to close several rest areas. We closed 9 rest areas throughout the state. They are currently open, and we're trying to keep them open. We'll probably have a final decision by the end of this month. We're hoping to have a final decision if we can keep them rest areas open. The only rest area that's closed right now is the Fort Still rest area, and that rest area is actually closed because we did get a grant to increase parking in that area, and so they're doing work in that rest area, and that's why that one's closed. And this is part of our list of priorities, because so you can see there, these are delayed construction projects. A couple of these projects, like the I-80, I-25 interchange, you can see that's $310 million. Well, that pretty much take our whole construction budget in a year. But what we did is we went ahead and we wanted to make sure that we're ready in case we did get a GRAZE grant, a big grant at the federal government. They're looking at big construction projects. So we did want to be ready for that in case the feds did decide that they were going to give us some money. So we want to be prepared for that. And then also, Cheyenne College Drive, there was a 5-lane section there that we were going to do. And if you can see, these are all what we can consider capacity increases. And since we're in preservation mode and we need additional money just to preserve what we have, it doesn't really make sense for us to do any capacity increases on our system. So that's kind of where we're at. And then, of course, if we did get more money available, then we would prioritize based on our guiding principles. So this is our STIP process, and really where we're at right now is we're in the June to August, and that's why we're doing this presentation now. And I guess the main point of this is we do want your, with the partnership that we have through you and through the public, we do want input on our projects. We do have several different systems that we analyze our roads with. We have a safety management system. We check crashes, geometric. And we have a pavement management system, the condition of the roads. And we also have a bridge management system that we use to evaluate our roads. But we do want the people that actually use our roads to give us input on our projects also. And you can see in September, we're going to have a transportation commission that hopefully they'll approve our STIP then. And then October 1st, we should have it published. And this is our interactive map. And I'll go ahead and let Jordan explain our interactive map here.
So right now, as part of the STIP, we do have a virtual process, which I'll talk about a little later in the presentation. But year-round, even when we're not actively doing the STIP meetings, we do have a chance for public comment on the STIP and our proposed projects. So this map will show all our proposed projects currently in the STIP, color-coded by year, and then it gives you the opportunity to either comment on an existing project to voice your support or concerns, as well as a chance to add projects that aren't in the STIP that you think should be. So that's available on our website, state.y.us, but there is a virtual component to this meeting that I'll talk about later as well.
So this is our highway project process. We have a planning phase, and that could be up to a few months to several years, depending on the scope of the project. And then we have the design phase, and of course, we go out to contract. I guess a couple of points here. Each one of these phases has a public input or public meetings involved with it. So if we have a complex project, we want to make sure we have a public meeting to get public input on that. And also, if we have one out to construction, that we're going to use detours or affect bus routes or stuff like that, then we also will have a public meeting once we get a contract on board to kind of let everybody know what the schedule is. We want to make sure that everybody knows in advance what we're doing. One thing I will break it up to, when we bring up when Wes brings up the projects, we do coordinate with cities and towns and make sure that they do get their work done underneath our roadways before we go and do a reconstruction project or an overlay on it. So this chart here kind of shows that we let out the contract between $250 and $300 million every year, and we let approximately 100 projects a year. And I think we go to the next slide. What is a STIP document? I'm not going to be able to see the one on the right-hand side there, but the highway, basically, for highway projects, it's a 6-year plan. For our aeronautics project, it's a 5-year plan. The transit project, the public Safety Communications Commission, and the capital improvements are all 1-year plans. And I'll go ahead and hand this over to Wes, and he can tell you what our projects are going to be around this area for the next 6 years.
So we'll start with our current projects that are ongoing within the area in Albany County. We have the Curtis to 3rd Street project on I-80. That's a bridge rehab project along with concrete slab replacements followed by a high-performance wearing course. That project is $6.9 million and it's ongoing. They hope to finish that this fall and be out of the area. It has a completion date of 2022. We have the Quealy Dome West project. It is on I-80 from 282 to 291, and it's a mill overlay, wearing course, and structure rehab. They are currently working on that project, and it's estimated at $13 million. We have the Telephone Canyon project. That's a rockfall mitigation project. It's at 319, and an added location was at 323. So the goal of this is to reduce any loose rock that would potentially impact the traveling public or, impact the roadway. So they try to get the loose rock down and install some nets to catch the rock. They're going to finish that in the next month or so, and that's $850,000. Some local district-wide projects that are going on in the area. We have a chip seal on YO 130 from 10 to 21, and a chip seal on US 287 from 404 to 412. Those both have an overshoot, so to reduce the fly rock. Then we have a contract patch that just started this week on Grand Avenue. There's going to be some drainage work at 30th and Grand, and concrete or curb and gutter as well. They hope to complete that work at night to avoid impacts to the public, but should be out of here by August 15th. Then there's a bridge rehab out near Bosler. In 2022, we have the YO 230 Lake Hattie section, basically from right near 130, 230 out to the 11.5. That's a mill overlay chip seal, and that's estimated at $5 million. That's going to be letting this fall. Work in 2022. We have the Vidavoo West project from 324 to 330. It's a mill overlay, plant mix wearing course, and structure work. So the Blair structures as well as the Vidavoo structures will be worked on that project. That's estimated at just under $10 million. This is a project where we're coordinating with the city, and it's an intersection on 3rd Street and Flint, right near Safeway. There's going to be a signal installed there, do some curb and gutter and ADA improvements as well, and the city will be paving Flint Street, a mill and overlay, and that's estimated at $850,000. Along with our district projects, we have a host of district projects every year. We try to coordinate these by county. Every year we have slab repairs, 2 bridge rehab projects, chip seal, crack seal, and contract patch. We identify these in their shorter project process, so we haven't identified these project locations yet, but they will be in years to come. We usually select these projects based off of, public concerns or local government concerns. 2023, we have the YL 34 Bosler North section from 0 to 9.7. That'll be a mill, level, and overlay to try to smooth some of that section out, followed by a chip seal, and we're estimating that at $5.7 million. We have the US 30 287 Laramie North project from Curtis Street on the edge of town north, 10 miles. It's a mill overlay seal coat chip seal. We're trying to coordinate that work with the city's waterline improvement project. I think there's a 200-foot overlap, so we want to make sure that that project's complete prior to this mill and overlay. And that's estimated at $5.5 million. We have the Curtis Street interchange structure replacement on I-80 at 310. That's a full bridge replacement followed by some railing and decorative lighting, and that's estimated at $9.3 million. We have Snowy Range Road intersection lighting, and we're estimating that at $75,000. This is a HSIP funded project, so that's federal funds, and it's a highway safety improvement program, and this was identified by our traffic engineer as one of those projects. District-wide projects again, locations to be determined at a later date. 2024, we have the Rock River McFadden section on YO13 from 0 to 8. It's mill overlay, chip seal, and a structure replacement. We're estimating that at $5.3 million. Bill Nye project, this is from tying into the existing Bill Nye section at Boulder Drive, and it'll come down to 19th Street, as well as some additions to Corthell. It's a new construction with a sanitary water sewer line. That'll be installed by the city, and we're estimating that at $10.8 million. That is STPU funding, and that's urban funds for Laramie, City of Laramie. We're going to add some snow fence on I-80 over the summit at 327.2 to 8, and hopefully that'll help with some of the drifting issues up there. We're estimating that at $220,000. Here's our district-wide projects again. 2025, we have the Curtis de Boswell section, or Curtis de Boswell Street on 3rd Street. It's 327 to 400. It's going to be a mill overlay, ADA improvements, traffic signal replacement. We're going to replace the Spring Creek structure, and there's going to be some median work as well as utility work. That structure had a load rating reduction on it for emergency vehicles, so we added that to this project to try to get that done as soon as possible. We're estimating that at $6.1 million. District-wide projects again. 2026, we have the I-80 Laramie West section from Curtis Street West from 309.9 to 299.5. That's a mill overlay and a wearing course. We're estimating each lane at about $9 million. On 130, we have east of Centennial. This is near the turn for YO11. It's mile marker 17 to 27. It's a mill overlay and chip seal. We're estimating that at $5.5 million. 2027, we have the section closer to town on YO130. It's mile marker 10 to 17, mill overlay and chip seal. This is a project we anticipate moving up in our STIP, so it'll likely be completed before the previous project that we discussed. We're estimating that one at $9.2 million. Our district-wide projects again. A couple of other projects that you may have noticed. You've probably heard about the I-25, I-80 interchange. Ralph mentioned it earlier. This project is estimated at $310 million. So we don't really have funding for this project. What it's going to be is a eastbound to northbound flyover and a westbound to southbound flyover, as well as we'll leave two of the cloverleafs in place. It has over 30 structures that'll be rehabilitated or new structures in place. We're looking forward to receiving additional funds to try to complete this project. It'll be completed in 3 phases. If you've driven to Rawlins this summer, seen plenty of road work. So this is our I-80 winter freight project. We received a $20 million grant. It was a build grant from the federal government. It is adding additional parking at Quealy Dome and the Fort Steele rest area. The Quealy Dome rest area has been built, but they're going to be completing it next year. They hope to get the Fort Steele rest area paved this year and open back up to the public. There's added climbing lanes at the Cooper Cove section, westbound, and then the Halleck Ridge section, eastbound. I did want to point out that WYDOT is involved in the, we review all of the wind development. They do traffic impact studies, and WYDOT reviews these and oftentimes obtains a road use agreement with the wind companies. What WYDOT does is they'll review the trip counts and amount of traffic that will be added to the area to see if it warrants any turn lanes. And then they'll also look at some of the turning movements at intersections, see if those need to be improved to allow safe travel of the windmill parts and pieces. So what we like to get we like to provide the industry with the capability to get through the highways, and we also try to make sure everybody's safe while they're doing it. That's all the projects in our STIP. I'll pass it back over to Ralph.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question, and it's just going to be a basic one, which is how would you folks like us to approach questions this evening? Do you want us to save them up, or because there's probably been a couple of times when we could have asked them. Do you want to just do them at the end of each section? Because I see I have some folks raising hands here, but I want you to kind of let us know how you want to take
the hands raised very easily, so definitely right now is a good time for some
Okay.
questions.
All right, Councilmember Schuster, I saw you had a hand up, and then since you did have a hand up, we'll go to you first, and then I'm going to go over to the commissioners, I think, just to kind of maintain that format. But go ahead, Councilor Schuster.
Thank you. You talked about 3rd Street and Spring Creek. Right now, a pedestrian has to walk off the sidewalk on the street and then can come back over to the sidewalk when they cross Spring Creek. When you were talking about the bridge rehab there, will that include a pedestrian walkway on each side?
Yes, we've received a letter from the city requesting a 10-foot wide pathway and a 5-foot normal sidewalk on the other side, so it'll be widened to accommodate those movements.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. It's a good question. Let's go over to the commissioner's chamber and check with Chairman Gosar and Commissioner Ibarra, see if we have any questions over there.
Mayor, we have nothing, no questions so far.
Okay, great. And I'll just periodically check because it's going to be a lot harder for me to see you guys raise a hand, so I'll be checking. Council members, other questions? I have a question, and part of it was addressed. You talked about prioritizing some of those projects and how public feedback or those concerns that you might have raised with you by members of the public help make those decisions and inform those decisions. Do you also do any type of condition indexing on road surfaces like the city does with a pavement condition assessment that we have someone come in and help us with? Or do you have an internal process with that? Things other than public comment that you might receive that help you make those priority choices?
No, absolutely. So the beginning process of the STIP, we identify the road sections by our pavement management system. So that's an internal program within the materials program. They evaluate each section of roadway. They check smoothness, cracking, rutting. And then we have candidates that we can choose from, and we have different treatments that we can select. So all of our projects are developed by a need basis. So that's our starting point where we select these projects, and that public feedback would help us identify, if we have two candidates that are the same in our pavement management system, but we're receiving more feedback on one or the other, that would be our optimal choice, as we try to get the one that we're receiving the most complaints on. So that goes with our bridges as well. So we have a bridge management system. So every year we try to select bridges off our bridge management inventory, and we have to meet certain goals, square footage goals on rehabilitation or replacement of structures. So our bridge program inspects each structure, and then we essentially get ratings on each of those structures, and we have a pick list that we can select the structures. So we try to group those structures in, location and try to get projects put together on that basis. So the Spring Creek structure, how that came about was the new FAST Act, and our bridge program evaluated that structure, and it didn't meet capacity for some of the emergency vehicles crossing it. So that's considered a critical finding for WIDOT, so we try to get those structures taken care of as quickly as possible. We've had 3 in our district this year, one out near Saratoga in the Ryan Park area on 130, and we're replacing that with a structure over it this summer. So those are all things we look into as we evaluate the STIP process and select projects.
I really appreciate that answer. So that's what kind of forms the sort of the baseline for project priorities. And then as you receive input, that also helps you make those choices. Could you just share with us one more time before I go to the next question, what the best way for the citizen concerns and observations to be shared with you is?
So Jordan mentioned there's our STIP process where she'll bring it up a little bit more as she presents a little bit later, but there's an online STIP process that you can, anybody that doesn't attend, we'll give you a website. I stepped through it this afternoon, but you can add suggested projects or comment on the existing projects, as well as we have a STIP link on our current website, and that was the kind of the pinpoint location where you can add projects where you think they're needed. And of course, you can always call the district office and get a hold of Jordan or Ralph or myself and let us know. You know, that's the easiest way probably to get a hold of us is by phone or email, and then we'll definitely look into the concerns.
Thank you. And I apologize. I didn't mean to jump ahead. I sometimes have a bad habit of that, and we look forward to that next part of the presentation. I'm going to go over to our council member, Erin O'Doherty. Go ahead.
Thank you. First, I want to just say thank you because you do so much for us to keep us safe, especially, you know, that we can check online to see what's going on with the roads during bad weather. But I was just wondering, can you give me an example of a structure besides a bridge? I'm having, is it like culverts and stuff? Is that what structures are?
Yeah, in YDOT's definition, it's anything spanning more than 20 feet. So we have box culverts. Some of our large pipe would be a structure, but yeah, these are typical bridges, what you'd think. We have a lot of machinery passes, or, you know, the one on Spring Creek is actually a box culvert. So they're looking into, you know, what type of structure they'll put back in there, depending on, they're really evaluating Spring Creek drainages. So there's a lot of challenges with identifying what the proper structure is, but yeah, anything 20 feet or larger. So some of our big pipes will be tracked in our bridge management system, and box culverts, anything larger than that could be a structure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Doherty. Thanks for waiting, Councilor Somerville. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. So just a real brief maybe question/comment. I really appreciated how you guys went about doing the pedestrian and bicycle access on the Snow Range Bridge, and wondered if that's something that you're also including in the Curtis Street Bridge over I-80 over here in West Laramie. As you know, that's pedestrians and bicycles don't necessarily mix very well with the semis on that narrow bridge right now.
Yes, that has been added. And that's a program that's called context-sensitive amenities. So on reconstruction projects, that funding's available up to 3%. So a lot of times the city will request to add, you know, pedestrian paths, bike lanes, decorative lighting, decorative railing. Those are some of the things that are going to be on that Curtis Street interchange project.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Good questions. Do we have any more on this topic before we have our guests move on to the next portion? All right, let's go on to the next part of the presentation. Thanks a lot for answering those questions.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot left, Mr. Mayor, but we do have our local agency programs, as you can see here. We have the Bridge Rehab Off Systems, the TAP, the Transportation Alternative Program. And I guess the city does take advantage of these programs as well as the county. We have the CMAQ program, which is a dust abatement program. You know, I showed that chart earlier, the $70 million that we give to, or not give, but we partner with the counties and cities with on that, and that you guys do take advantage of it. I guess one of the TAP programs, the TAP program is basically $2.5 million. It's a competitive program that anybody in the state, any municipality in the state or county in the state can apply for. And what they do is they, and you guys did apply for one recently, and I think that was over by LaPrelle Park, that pathway that connects over by LaPrelle Park over to 30th Street. You guys applied for that. And what that does help on that too is you guys did have, you know, some of the plans started, and you guys do have the funding for that. So there is a committee that gets together that chooses them projects, and it does help when you guys have you know, are along in the process and do have funding. and local governments. The best person to contact if you have any questions on any of these is Sarah Jane Ellis. She is our local government coordinator. There is other ways too we could partner with you, and that's like, for instance, if we have a project that we have a lot of crush base on, that we're making crush base on a project, and we can get our ARS with you guys, and then maybe that'll save you some mobilization costs or something like that. And also, our supply purchases. For example, our paint, we order a lot of paint, so if you guys wanted to jump on our purchase order for paint, we can do that. I guess the only caveat on this is we do have ICAP costs, the indirect costs that we do get 11% for indirect costs for any of them ARS. And, if we do get an ARS, which is an authority to render services. You guys have any questions on the local programs?
Questions on the local programs. That's really interesting to hear about that, those opportunities. And I think, frankly, those kinds of team up opportunities are just going to get more and more important for obvious reasons as the years come down. Commissioner's Chamber, Commissioner Gosar, anything for the YDOT folks?
Yeah, Mayor Weaver, at the current level of funding, when will YDOT not be able to maintain the asset going forward? It seems like we can't build any more new capacity, but maintaining the assets we have might be something if we're $354 million in unfunded. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
As far as if we get more additional money, or
no, if you're constantly underfunded, when would you be unable to maintain assets in their current state so that highways fall away, or not fall away, but fall apart, bridges no longer get replaced? Is that something you guys talk about?
Oh yes, absolutely. So right now, we, from the study that we did from the consultant, we are underfunded to maintain our assets we have right now, and that is why we're in preservation mode. And so the highways will deteriorate if we don't get the funding we needed. They'll continue to deteriorate. And we do have a deterioration curve too for our highways. So what happens there is you have a curve, and then if you do an overlay like every 7 years or so, then we can maintain what we have. But if it goes too far, then all of a sudden an overlay no longer works and we have to reconstruct it, and that just costs more money in the long run. But we're continually evaluating that. And another thing about all these local agency programs is, I guess YDOT chooses to participate in these programs. And one of the reasons why is because most of our money comes from the feds, and our match is, for simplicity, it's usually 90-10 match. We have to come up with 10% of the money. And we're really focused on coming up with that 10% of the money. And we have been talking about these local agency programs also. And so far, we are keeping most of them. But, and the reason why is because YDOT simply doesn't have enough money to match the percentages. Even if we did take that extra $70 million a year, we don't really have the money to match that anyway. So we figured that, we can help out the communities if we keep these programs and if you guys can come up with a match.
Commissioner Gosar, you still got the floor. I'm sorry, you go right ahead.
Yeah, just follow up to that. Is there a priority basis for local roads that if it gets as tight or stays as tight or gets more tight, that you just no longer be able to maintain certain pavements in certain counties on roads? Do you have a priority list of those?
So we do have a priority list, and we do, obviously we make sure that based on traffic volumes and basically just we want to try to keep the services in our roads for as many people as we can. And that's the same thing we do with everything, like a snow priority list and stuff like, we have certain levels of service that we try to maintain based on traffic volumes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm finished, Mayor Weaver.
Really interesting, good line of questioning there. Made me think of a couple too, but Councilmember Gabriel's been waiting patiently. Go ahead, Councilmember Gabriel. Oh, Councilmember, we're gonna have to get you to get the mic on. That's
there we
okay.
go. Thanks, Mayor, appreciate it. Thought about 3rd and Flint next year, construction with cars coming in and out from Planet Fitness, Safeway, and so on. I was just curious about pedestrians, any particular consideration being given to pedestrians in that intersection at 3rd and Flint? Yes, 3rd and Flint.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the driving factors of putting that signal in was creating a safe location for peds to cross 3rd Street. At least that was kind of what kicked it off. It does meet volume warrants for a traffic signal as well, but it'll have marked crosswalks, the normal, pedestrian push buttons, walk cycle, all of that. So yeah, that's a place we anticipate, and we're hoping people will cross safely.
Great, thank you. And another question, I was driving north of Casper this weekend and noticed, I don't think I've seen this any other place, some red asphalt, and it was just in a small section of the highway. I was just curious the significance of that.
So that's a scoria rock material, and that's up there. They have plenty of scoria material, so they'll use that as a friction course on the chip seal. So it's actually the red aggregate that's on the surface of the roadway.
That's like a micro surface.
Is that ever used in this area?
Just we don't have that color of aggregate here. It's more of a northern region up. There's plenty of it in Buffalo, Sheridan areas where they'll use that. It's kind of a delicate aggregate, but they will use it because they have an abundance of it for a kind of a surface treatment as a skid resistance. So mainly it's just our pits and quarries don't produce that color of material.
Great, thank you.
Boy, the things you really didn't know and probably never would have if people hadn't asked questions like that. Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. I have one question, and it's about the effort for ADA upgrades along some of these projects that are going to be going through Laramie on 3rd Street and some of these other areas, and what kind of attention's been paid and efforts have been made for ADA-focused upgrades. We often hear from our constituents about really trying to, their desire for us to really try to pay attention and focus on trying to make those improvements and work with partners like yourselves whenever we can. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that if I could.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime we touch the curb and gutter, we're responsible to address ADA concerns. So on all of our projects, when we come into the area, they should be addressed and meet current ADA standards, whether that be corners. It's all going to be looked at and evaluated.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Other questions from council? Okay, so back over to you, Whiteout folks, if there's a few more pieces to the discussion here.
Just one last thing, circling back to, how can people make comments, if people aren't in this meeting or if your constituents have a complaint about a whiteout road, how can they reach out to us? And beyond, calling our office, we do have a live meeting right now, a virtual component to the STIP meeting at y.stipmeeting.com. It's just a guided website more than a virtual meeting. You can go on any time, day or night, and guide yourself through it. It is not quite as localized as this presentation. It gives a lot of that same stuff from the beginning, and then it gives the option for them to look at the slides from this meeting, but it might not have some of the explanations. So if they have any questions, they can reach out to us. But it is a kind of a good way to get to know how our funding is looked at and what the STIP consists of and everything like that. And then again, if you want to look at the STIP itself, it's a very dense, big document, but it's at this website here. That's where that public comment map that's up year-round is located. The STIP virtual meeting, back up again, sorry, it does have a public comment map on it, so they can see our projects, well as comment and add their own. So it's another great way to do that. And there's another map that does the same thing on our website up year round. So we definitely want input that way. In addition to them, they can reach out to me at my email there. So we definitely want the public input as much as we can, and that includes you guys.
Appreciate that. I think those are probably going to pay off to have all those different multiple ways for people to do it, because people are going to have different preferences. Along those same lines, I wonder if we might see if we had public comment now on anything that they've heard about. But I'll check council members, make sure you don't have a question or a comment before I do that. And I'll check with Chairman Gosar over there, see if he's thought of any other questions before we go over to public comment.
No questions for us, Mayor Weaver.
Thank you. All right, let's see if we have any public comment on the YDOT presentation from our attendees. I'm checking. And I do not see any hands up, but I wanted to make sure. City Clerk, did you see anybody? Nope. Okay. All right. Council members, one more time for any follow-up on this STIP presentation. I think we know where to go for information. And I'll say on behalf of the council, thank you very much. These presentations are pretty valuable. There's a lot of these things that we think about at different points during the year and in different discussions, and we don't get that many opportunities to check in and hear from the YDOT people. So it is valuable, and we really appreciate your time here tonight. It's a good update, and we look forward to maybe digging in a little more and looking at some of those things in a little more detail. But it looks like there's a lot of projects, like there always are. And I think another takeaway from this is your local government partners also share some concern about funding sustainability in the years to come. And we also have an eye towards when we can work together on things like purchasing paint and some of those other material costs that we might be able to team up on. Boy, I think that's a good idea. And it's just going to keep seeming like a better and better idea when we look at those budget sheets. So I appreciate that that portion of the meeting as well. Do we have anything else, council members, other than our appreciation? Commissioner Gosar?
No, thank you, Mayor Weaver.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And Jordan, it's good to see you or hear you and see you on the screen again. We miss you as a regular attendee.
Yeah, it feels good to be back. And if you guys think of anything when we're gone and you're like, I should have asked that, just feel free to reach out. We're happy to help.
Thank you.
We do appreciate the partnerships we have with the county and the city, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you folks. Have a good rest of your evening. Okay, council members and Chairman Gosar, Commissioner Ibarra, I think now we're to our item number 4, and that's our discussion. And I'm so sorry that I hadn't reviewed this earlier to confirm the spot regarding the grants position, but I am really glad that's there, and that's going to be another component of this. I'm not quite sure who wants to kick this off. My instinct is that I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Gosar and let him share whichever portion of the meeting he'd like to start with first, and then we'll go from there. Just a little nod and a thumbs up from everybody's good enough to let me know they're okay with that. I'm not seeing where he's at on my screen anymore, though. Wonder if there was an accidental disconnect.
I wonder if when I took Jordan out, if they accidentally got sent out as well. So they're back with us here.
Yeah, there they are. I was just about to say, well, we can take a quick recess if we need to, but we'll just wait. We'll just wait for them to rejoin us, and I'll go back through what I just said a minute ago, if that's okay with all of you guys.
We heard it.
Oh, you did?
You just
Okay.
couldn't communicate. We could hear you.
Okay.
And generally, a lot of people like us that way, just to hear you and not communicate back. So
I know the feeling. But anyway, over to you, Chairman Gosar.
Well, I was just going to start down the list, and Councilwoman Pearson and Councilwoman Somerville, would you just help me out here? I think some of this list is the stuff that's generated on the squishy panel, I guess is how it was titled. I'm not sure exactly what we call it, the Intergovernmental Cool Kids panel or whatever. So just to start off, there was the job sharing the grants position. I think that the county has been short, grants department for some time. I'm not sure if that is probably shared by you guys. And so here was a perfect opportunity, since many of our grants are similar. I think we both apply for SLIB grants. We both apply for federal grants that are similar. And maybe this was an opportunity to have a position shared between both entities that made sense financially in the world of tough budgets. But then I think it also allowed for maybe collaborative granting. So, things that might be available. In my day job, I think people and granting agencies and foundations are now starting to ask about alignment of communities for projects. And so in healthcare, they want to have the hospital on board with clinics, with public health. And so I think this might be another opportunity to think and talk about that. The devil's always in the details of this, but we have approved at the commission in this budget monies for this position. And it seems that if I talk to you in the council, you guys would be interested in that, Mayor Weaver. And I don't know if you want to take these one by one. I suspect you probably do.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go, Mr. Chairman. I do. And I also want to give our city staff an opportunity to kind of participate in this discussion concurrently, with us, because there's sometimes a little bit more knowledgeable specific to each subject. I see that got a couple people on our call. I was going to check with the city manager and see what she might want to share with us on this topic. And then I see we also have our human resources director here with us, and if she'd like to contribute to the conversation as well. But over to you, city manager, on this topic.
Thanks, Council. Yeah, I think we're ready to move forward as soon as we just get the logistics and details figured out here. And Lori has started laying the preliminary groundwork on this. I'll let her give you a more fully fleshed update on what's happened in the last couple.
Welcome, Lori. It's been a while. It's good to see you on the Zoom.
You saw my name, but you didn't see me. But
there you are.
There we are.
Special guest, HR Director Lori Curry. Hi.
Thank you. Hi. How are you today? So yes, Janine has mentioned this. The city manager has mentioned this to me. We're in the process of finding the job description, emerging job descriptions, to come up with one to forward to the county to see what they would like to see on this job as well. Interesting thing is that I pulled up the job description that we had several years ago when we did have a merged position between the county and the city, and it was grants writer at that time. So I feel like we can probably adapt that one to where we are today and get a good position that is comfortable for both sides. So that's where we're at right now. I hope to have it to the county HR person by later this week. It's in the final stages of merging and drafting in our office. With that, I'd answer any questions if I can.
Absolutely, and I'm sorry, I just can't help but make a comment. Isn't that interesting how something that used to be beneficial to the two agencies has once again presented itself as something that might be a good idea? Councilmember O'Doherty, I see you've got a hand up.
My one worry, I'm really in favor of this idea, but my one worry is I don't want to create bad feelings if somebody either feels like they have too many bosses, or if one entity feels like the other entity is using that person all their time and they can't get their attention for the other projects. So I'm not sure how to negotiate that. I suspect that you people in the management business have a better idea, but I would like us to be forthright if anybody feels like they're not being treated fairly. And I was wondering if maybe our county clerk might want to weigh in if she had any experience with the last time we had this joint position. Anyway, just throwing that out there. How do we keep from creating friction? Because we want everything to be cool. Thanks.
Now, I have a question. Lori, has Bailey been consulted at all or brought in on this at all?
She hasn't at this point, but it was brought to my attention late last week that Bailey existed, and we were going to have a conversation with her as soon as we start that conversation with the county.
Thank you. I'd like to see that.
Jackie, do you have any memory of that joint position, Jackie, and what may or may not have gone well?
Chairman Gosar, to be honest with you, no, I do not have recollection. I can't even remember who the joint grants writer was for both the city and the county, to be honest. And so I'm interested in finding out who that was, and then maybe my memory will be recollected and I could give some better insight. I apologize.
Well, that's interesting, but I think it's probably been a while. I was just about to ask our HR director, Lori, do you have some past memory about how that program worked?
I don't, but I would say that as Jackie was saying that, I was wondering if this was a position that was thought about in the past, and I just pulled it up because it wasn't in my tenure either. So I'm not sure about that, but I was wondering if it was maybe thought about earlier, and then we went separate ways. But I was going to add one more thing to this, the conversation about it, is that with our shortage of finding employees, this is the perfect time to be doing this merging of these two positions, because we all can't find one of our own, so we want to share one type of thing. So,
boy, that's something I can get behind and agree with, I think, and I think probably the county commissioners might agree with us there too. City manager, maybe we're going to strike out here, but do you have context for this shared program and maybe what the discussion was around that? Was it something that you have seen in your time here, or did it predate that?
Yeah, I can say I vaguely recall maybe back in 2002-03 something, but I don't remember any detail.
Okay.
I would mention as well, I asked Lori to take a look at and discuss with the county in-house positions, but also the potential for contracting with folks on an outside way. So I think Lori's right. We're concerned about recruiting. It's tough times out there right now, but we do have the alternative or fallback position. In-house folks.
Okay. Little bit of microphone going in and out there, but I think we got the gist of it. We have the option to explore a contractual position that we share, and then there's also, we can look about doing some more in-house. Chairman Gosar, I've got some hands coming up over here, but I want to make sure that yourself and Commissioner Ibarra have shared everything you want to so far.
Yeah, and Mayor Weaver, I just kind of to familiarize everybody with the process at our committee. It generally is one side takes the lead, and then we'll flesh out the idea and then bounce it over to the other side. And so it's not uncommon for us to take the lead in the detention center and you guys take the lead in the EMS. And then we'll include the other side into those conversations, but to get one side fleshed out so that the other side has a sheet of music to work off of.
Makes sense to me. That sounds like a good way to try to get things done and keep them moving towards a policy goal. I appreciate that comment, though, for sure. Councilmember Gabriel, I saw that you had a hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was just going to remind Jackie that maybe a name from the past, Sheila Schiermetzler, was a grants writer for the county, and I think she worked a little bit with the city when probably back in the 90s, early 2000s. A very good grant writer who, with her husband, was in the county attorney's office. But that was, I don't think that was any kind of joint venture. I think she assisted the city in some grants, but she was very effective. And then Lori, I was just curious, are you guys looking at like a 50-50 split on time for grants if this should come about?
I'm not sure that has been decided or vetted out at this point. I think that we're just at the process where we're trying to find what kind of position works for both sides of it. And then as far as funding and everything like that, that will be ongoing conversations.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Councilmember Gabriel, and honestly for that take on it too, Lori, because that's another part of why we're doing these check-in and joint meetings with the commissioners. I think what I'm sensing is if we can do it and find a good functional way to put it together that's fair for the potential employee or contracted position, we are looking at a 50-50 split, is our hope. And I think one of the things that's going to maybe smooth that process out and make that job really congruent between the city and the county is we seem to understand that there's a number of areas for grants that we're both looking at the same time, and probably many of them could be complementary to our infrastructure needs and local government projects. That's the way I've sort of been understanding this, and I think that's the same up the street. But any other discussion or comments around that topic, now's the time. But that's the way I'm understanding it. Commissioners, is that the way you've been working from this as well?
I think it'll be imperfect when we set it up, but hopefully we'll just keep making iterations to the job so that it becomes a more usable thing, not letting perfect be the enemy of the good, and getting moving in places where we have similar needs.
Amen. Any other comments on this topic or okay.
I just have one last question, Mayor Weaver and Chairman Gosar and Lori, actually. Do we have an example out there in other counties, maybe Teton County, where city and county have some person in the same capacity, that we have a model that we may not have to reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure about that, but I'm certainly willing to send out some feelers and find out if there is something out there. And then I think that we've had good working relationships in the past, so I think that we can get something ironed out and that will be good for all parties involved. So I'm confident that will be the end result. But until we get there, yeah, I'm a firm believer of not reinventing the wheel. So if I can follow a different process, I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay. I don't know if you guys heard that. Jackie said she'd be happy to check with her county colleagues. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you, Lori.
That seems like a good idea. Just the regular practical, see what we can do best with this approach. And boy, I really agree with Chairman Gosar's, just because we don't have all the answers lined up in front of us at once. Of course, we'll keep going and seeing how to make it really functional for both of us. That's all I've heard from staff and from everybody here. So sounds good. We'll look forward to hearing more about it. Commissioner Gosar, I think that's takes care of the city side for questions and feedback on that first topic. So I don't know where you want to take us next, but it's over to you.
Maybe Councilor Pierce or Councilor Somerville would like to talk about EMS, since that has generally been in the city's bailiwick for quite some time now, and then we'll jump in there where we can.
Sounds good. I'll look for a hand up over here to take us there. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say I'm going to pick on the vice mayor, and that was going to be my comment. But I'll frame it a little bit. And I think we have Chief Johnson in the participants right now. City Clerk, is that true? Because I will need some assist from him if he's willing to come in with us. So we started a conversation just generally about EMS, emergency medical services, essentially ambulance costs to the city. For the city council members, this is not a new conversation. And I certainly leave a lot of this to the city manager as well. So the general conversation has been, what are those costs? We've looked at some data in terms of what are city calls, what are county calls. And so have started those conversations in our committee about how we can be more productive with our partners, essentially. And the first one is the county in relation to ambulance. So I'm going to leave it there and maybe pitch it over to the city manager or Chief Johnson to talk a little bit more specifics.
That's great. Thank you, Councilor Somerville. City manager or Chief Johnson, just whoever lets me know they'd like to weigh in. Nobody's in a big hurry. I don't have anybody unmuted yet. City manager, there. Thank you. You're up.
While the chief is getting unmuted, I'll just let you know we did present some data to the Intergovernmental Committee looking at call loads, costs, et cetera, and also briefing the committee on the agreement that the city currently has with Ivinson Memorial Hospital, and under which we provide services throughout not just the city, but well out into the county. Certainly, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those. The chief is as conversant in those data and metrics as I am, as well as Malia Brown, our chief operating officer, who prepared the pro forma of cost upon which we base a lot of these analyses.
Appreciate that, City Manager. Chief Johnson, I see you joined us, and really it's just an opportunity to add anything to this discussion that you think is good for us to hear or know. So whatever you'd like to tell us.
I could answer any questions probably. I don't think there's any more to add to what's been said. So,
Mayor, if I can jump in, I would add to this conversation that statewide there is increasing urgency in the conversation about how to provide ambulance service in the first place. It was made apparent to this committee that we are incredibly lucky to have the EMS service that we do here in Laramie and serving the county. And certainly, I think that's important to remember in the conversation, because there's a lot of places in Wyoming that are not this fortunate to have professional EMTs that can respond to all of those calls. And so, Chief, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, real briefly, what that call load breakdown looks like between the city and the county.
okay. So our mayor and commissioners and council members, our call load is we run roughly about 4,200 calls a year total. 80% of those being EMS, and of the EMS emergency calls, we run average about 21% into the county of that. So. And then right now we're on a clip. We've carved out our transfer numbers. Those are transfers from our facility at IMH to another facility in the Rocky Mountains, somewhere we go to Denver, Fort Collins, Loveland, Casper, Cheyenne. Those are our most normal patient destinations, and we're on a pace to do 500 of those this year. So of our emergency runs, 911 calls, 21%. Into the county, 80% of our total work volume is EMS.
Chief Johnson, I wonder if I can ask you a follow-up there. Has that 20% or so been pretty consistent over some period of time? It seems to me that it has been, but maybe you could give us a little better idea about that.
Mayor, yes, it's pretty consistent. 20. The high I've seen is 24. The low's been around 20. So 21 is what we've kind of figured. So,
and would you say that's been the case over 10, 15 years, 20 years?
Yes. Yeah, it's a long time. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I pulled data back to 16, and it's pretty consistent. So we've run into the county as the city department since 1979. So I would assume it goes back that far. So.
At least it goes back over the last 5 years, which is not an insignificant amount of time. And I bet you're right. I bet it's been pretty consistent for longer than that. Yeah. Thank you. I see that Councilmember O'Doherty's got a hand up. And if I've missed anybody, I'm sorry, just put a hand up. Councilmember O'Doherty, you're up, though.
I imagine a lot of those calls out of town are on the interstate. Do you know what percentage are people traveling through that get into accidents on our interstate?
Counselor, you are correct. We do a lot of runs out on the interstate as well as Highway 30 and 287. I do not have a breakdown of percentage wise from the interstate. If there's interest in certain areas or certain sections, I can do some research to look that up, but I don't have those numbers at hand. But you are correct. We do run on the interstate quite a bit.
I was just thinking that the interstate brings a lot of EMS work for us, for you, and obviously YDOT doesn't have money to help us out with that, but it seems like it's interstate travelers, a lot of them, when I see about wrecks in the paper and who was in it. I wish there was some way we could recoup that interstate travel cost, but I guess it also brings us visitors, so I can't complain too much. Thanks.
Vice Mayor Pierce, you've been waiting patiently. I'm sorry if I missed you earlier. Please go ahead.
No, that's okay. I think one thing we need to be aware of is this is going to be a pretty big issue across the state of Wyoming. I think our folks, our residents in County are going to learn, just how to have, and we want to maintain that, and we don't want to lose that. And working with the county is a great first step, but there are other partners out there that we need to consider having conversations with. So we need to keep that in mind as well. So, and we will, our committee will certainly focus on kind of dicing up those data points and, really digging into potential other partners and maybe even at, I don't know, but the state might, there might be a funding or a program or something that we could also participate in, knowing that this is at a critical level across the state, and there may be some opportunities there. It might be wishful thinking on my part, given our state budget situation, but it's a pretty big issue, and I guess that's about all I'd have to say. It's been an interesting learning curve for me as well to just look at the data and see the numbers and like I said, how fortunate we are here in Albany County.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pierce. And I think that's a really good point. And honestly, I'm going to be a touch more direct in my comments along those lines because I want to add to that. And I'll start with just a quick comparison. When I lived in Rock Springs, which is a community I lived in for about 5 years. I was an RA during some of that time, a resident assistant at the community college over there. It's a good job and I liked it and I enjoyed going to the community college over there. We had an awful lot of EMS calls that required response to the dorms up there for a whole variety of things, this, that, or the other thing. And I would just be a little bit curious to see how much of the volume of emergency response for emergency services generates calls that are directed up to the dorms and student housing. Who knows what that percentage would be? It might be 2%, it might be 5%. It would be interesting to know that because I think it's fair to talk about all the different stakeholders that depend on the emergency services that are provided through the city. And I think it's an interesting point. Now, where that conversation goes from here, or how much further it goes, I don't know. But I think it's a fair point, and I think it's an interesting point. And when I bring up that Rock Springs story, I do so because that's a community that relied on a patchwork of EMS services, from private folks to other types of responders, and depending on the services that were needed. A little bit different situation here, but I remember that conversation being of concern to local governments there as well. So I think it's just fair to consider it. Chief Johnson, that's not really like, hey, can you go get that for us? But I think that probably should be part of the discussion, is to see what percentage of calls might be attributable to, say, the dorms or student housing. That would be of interest to me. I see we've got another hand up there. I think it was Councilmember Gabriel. Right?
Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah.
Chief, did you want to comment on that before I ask?
Sure, Mayor and councilors and commissioners. I do have some data in front of me. I don't have it broke out in percentage, but I'll list off 5 years of data that we've run EMS calls up to UW buildings. In 2016, it was 126 calls. In 2017, it was 128 calls. In 2018, it was 130 calls. In 19, it was 153 calls. And in 20, which was a year of COVID, it was 69 calls. So that one's kind of an outlier, but we're averaging around that 130 to 150 was the high, but mostly around 130. And those are to the dorms and the buildings up there. I do not have that broke down in a percentage. I'd have to get my calculator out and do the math. So.
I appreciate that, Chief, and I didn't really want to cut you off. I just wasn't sure if you were going to be prepared to answer that question to that level of specificity, and I wanted to get over to Councilor Gabriel. But I appreciate that answer, and Councilmember Gabriel, I appreciate the extra time there for the follow-up. But back over to you for your questions, and thank you both.
Great, thanks. Chief, I was just curious, especially in winter time, if we had multiple calls, city, county, especially, something on the interstate, and then you had a call in the city. How flexible are you with multiple calls and being able to handle and setting up priorities on where to go?
Councilor Gabriel, I want to just to kind of review our system. We have 5 ambulances that are outfitted. We have another ambulance that the PD uses for SWAT. And when we run short, they loan us back our old ambulance and we put it back into service. But the 5 ambulances, we have what we call 3 frontline ambulances. Out of each station, the crew can run an ambulance call, and we're districted out. So in the city, we're districted within 3 districts, and in the county, we go out of 2 different stations, whether we're going east or west typically. But it's usually the closest ambulance responds. As far as, our staffing, we obviously have staffing limitations. So we have to start backfilling in. County calls have longer turnaround times. So getting a unit back into service, if we're running multiple county calls, we're out of service a little longer. But there are several, I could run I do have data on a graph here that shows how many times we've had our 4th line ambulance out and 5th line ambulance out. I'd have to search for it and review it, but we do have that data for you that we could provide. So, but we do run, then we have to rely on backfill, people coming in. One thing that's really helped us out is keeping some more of our firefighters in service on our transfers. We've started that, I know you've heard of it, it's what we call our civilian driver program, where we've trained non-fire personnel to be a driver on the out-of-town transfers, because we spend a lot of time on the road, and that was really reducing our emergency response capability. So that's helped out a bunch. And then, you know, we get what we can back in on overtime when we're running a lot of calls. So, but we do have 5 ambulances deep in the city. We're districted out 3 districts, and then we go into the county with the closest one. I believe I answered your question, but maybe not.
No, that's very good. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Mayor, you're muted.
Yeah, I caught it. Thank you. Thanks, Councilor Gabriel, and also thank you for giving the chief an opportunity to answer some of that question that I had before. Also, thank you. Other questions for the chief on this opportunity to kind of get some background information. Commissioners, do I hear you over there?
Yeah, we're just discussing amongst ourselves, and I think maybe just a little bit of background. This conversation started because of this work together, I think. I was really quite honestly unaware and ignorant of this issue. And so catching me up to speed has been kind of a heavy lift for your staff. And so thank you guys for that. I really do appreciate it. But this is, I think when you have arrangements to memorialize them with MOUs and contractual agreements, that they outlive people in these positions. And I think, you know, this is a really important piece. Now, how the money gets traded back and forth, we can figure that out. But just to have this conversation, you know, as a nonprofit director, your going alone ends after the first cup of coffee and the first look at the budget. And so I think about sustainability, and the more partners that you have, the more sustainable your entity is. And so I think about this in sustainability, but then I also think in opportunities. There are movements in healthcare, and then the chief can talk to you much more in depth than I can about keeping people out of emergency rooms that aren't necessarily needing emergency rooms. And there are paramedicine opportunities that are being funded if people are willing to engage as a countywide, as a community-wide systems. And so, you know, I've had conversations with Chief Johnson years ago about things like that, and I think those opportunities will be available, but the system has to be sustainable and in place. You know, the fact that the EMSs are paramedics is really important when it comes to something like that. And so I think this conversation's been really interesting, really eye-opening, but I think it also dovetails to the detention center conversation. I think that one was needed to be done, and I think this one, in my opinion, needs to be done also. And we want to get right with it and pay what we owe, so that we have a contractual arrangement for a really amazing service that not many places in Wyoming can talk about right now. I just sat in on a task force throughout the state, and there is real issues about communities our size having access to EMS at all, and certainly not paramedics in their EMS. And so I think it's really an opportunity to do something interesting and something amazing while shoring up a much needed service.
Appreciate those comments, Commissioner Gosar. You know, if you've paid attention to some reporting in local media about Wyoming communities, it hasn't been hard to find stories about cities that are struggling with how they're going to provide ambulance service and which way they're going to go. And there's been some of them that have been without it for brief periods of time. I see the city manager has been waiting for me to call on her. I'm sorry, but I don't know if we got all the comments from the commissioners. I don't know if Commissioner Ibarra was going to add to that.
No, we're discussing something different. I'm
okay,
sorry.
no, that's great. I just want to check because it's hard for me to see hands. No problem. City Manager, thanks for waiting.
Mayor, I just wanted to add the percentages to the perspective of the numbers that Chief Johnson provided for you. I ran those quickly because I have all this in front of me. The numbers, Chief, that you recited in the realm of 130, those were calls directly to campus or geolocated to the dorms only?
There were calls to campus. There would be
Okay.
the dorms and any buildings like
Okay, so university properties, I guess.
Yes.
So when I ran those numbers, just for a couple of years, it looks like those calls range between 6 and 8% of all calls within the city of Laramie.
Thank you for that information. And that's just over the couple of years that, the handful of years that the chief presented us with from recent memory.
Mayor, that's correct, yes. And I did exclude 2020 because one thing our committee knows, but the broader group might not, is that 2020 is a sort of oddball year in terms of medical calls and responses.
That makes sense. And this is not one of these, oh, let's point fingers at the University of Wyoming for our problems type of comments from me. It's simply, what's the context? What generates calls for our emergency services in our community? And I think this touches a little bit on what Chairman Gosar was talking about earlier. I wonder, and we're not going to know this, but I wonder how many of those calls could have potentially been directed to a different type of response service. What type of crisis calls were there? Again, just reaching back into my limited personal experience with those things, I can recall times with working with college students that might be having different kinds of circumstances that ended up resulting in some type of EMS or emergency service call, which I can tell you, had we had a different way of approaching that, we might have used different services. And this is, my 20 years ago experience as an RA. But I bet you, if we talk to University of Wyoming dormitory resident assistants today, they could share similar stories with you. And those things result in calls sometimes, especially when you're looking at anywhere between 6 and 8% of calls. I'd be willing to bet a chunk of those are going to be those kinds of calls that could possibly be addressed through another type of response. Anyway, I just think it's something that has to be mixed into the context of this conversation. Other questions or input? Councilmember Somerville, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to kind of close out my comments with saying, kind of throwing the Vice Mayor in the bus with me, that we'll continue to work on this conversation in the committee, providing whatever support and information that we can to the commission to answer their questions and kind of move this forward.
That sounds good. And it sounds like some good progress has been made, and the context of this conversation, I think, is really good in that we actually have an opportunity in Albany County. We're set up to be in a little bit more of a advantageous place than other parts of the state. Something that's a little unusual for us to hear about Albany County, right? That's not the usual way we begin addressing our local government challenges here. But this is an advantage. This is a good foundation for us to start, and that we have these services that we've been applying and making available to everybody, county, city, and everywhere in between here. So if we can keep doing that and finding the most fiscally responsible and wisest ways to do that, we're going to do it. It sounds like this intergovernmental cooperation working group / squishy committee has been doing some good work for us. Commissioner Gosar, I think we've got one more thing on this intergovernmental topic here. So I'm going to go back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Weaver. And I'm going to hand this over to Commissioner Ibarra, since she sits on that committee, and the CAP update. Commissioner Ibarra.
Thank you. Where we are is Janine had sent the subcommittee a draft of the CAP MOU as well as an RFQ. Both myself and Jennifer Curran have taken a look at that and turned it with very minor changes, correct?
They've all been approved by the city.
And, oh, super. And these have all been approved by the city. So at this point, I think we're ready to bring it to county commissioner meeting and take some action on them.
All right. That's a good update. And you guys, I really feel like these working groups have really been getting after it and getting these policy issues handled and moving towards some progress here. I want to check in with, I knew it was coming, Commissioner Gabriel to speak to us a little bit about the progress and the work so far as well. Go ahead, Commissioner. Sorry, bad habit, or good habit, Councilmember Gabriel.
Close. Thanks, Mayor. We have been meeting for several months, and I couldn't be more happier than I am that this is going to come before both bodies next week, as I understand it. August 3rd meeting. And it was great to see the comments from Chair Gosar and Commissioner Ibarra, also from Jennifer from the county and our committee members. I think we've got a good document that we all can at least review before next Tuesday. And I think we got a good start on this for the MOU, and we can get something done here for the cap and get an RFQ out here shortly. It's going to be a long process, but this is one of the first steps anyway. And to have the county in cooperation is very good, and I appreciate that. And I wanted to just mention too that Commissioner Gosar talking about cooperation on the EMT situation is so positive, and it's great to hear that we're trying to get something done here for city and county, and I appreciate that.
Good comments, Councilmember Gabriel. I totally agree with you, as I think everybody on the city council does. I think we also realize that there's an expectation on behalf of our shared constituents that we be getting some things done in this area. And so it's good to hear that progress is being made. Other council members from this committee that would like to share any points or comments about the work?
Just one last thing to Mayor Weaver. Also established more or less who will be sitting on the RFQ committee, who's interested in seeing that, and there's representation from both county and city as far as this working group, but also from our staff. So we're ready to go forward once this is approved by both entities.
That's great. That's great. And let me just say just one more positive thing about the progress that's been made between these two committees on these two topics. I think there's an expectation that the city and the county get together and get some work done on these, and it's getting done. There's more to do for sure, but the work is getting done, and it's moving in the right direction and in the direction that people expect and hope that it will be. That's what it seems like to me, and so I'm really glad to hear about these updates. Other discussion on these topics or anything related to them? I don't know if I'm seeing hands. If we've got a summary of next steps, I know that we've got some things coming forward on our respective agendas for the council and the commission to get the process rolling after this work session. So that's good.
Well, Mayor Reaver, I'd just like to commend Councilor Somerville and Councilor Pierce. It's been really easy to work with in your staff, City Manager Jordan and Chief Johnson and everybody who's taken the time to work with this. It's, nobody needs one more meeting, but they're willing to do it every other week. And sometimes they go for a couple of hours. And so I think that is really important. I think it's bearing out that hopefully the citizens will see some value in it when they have one set of maps to look at for the same ground, and that there might be some, consistent planning and things that they can build businesses and lives around. And so I think this is really important. I really do appreciate the work. I've learned a ton, and I just think we should just keep going. Right? We have more to do, and I think we can get a lot of things really interestingly done as we move through these processes. I think the grant manager plays into some of this work around the cap. I think it also plays into aquifer protection. I think it plays into making EMS more affordable by making it a paramedicine opportunity. I think those things kind of fit hand in glove, and if we can get more out of our buck, I think we're doing all of our citizens a service. And in the end, I am a citizen, right? And that is the highest calling that I have, and I really want you guys to help me get the most out of my money, and it seems like you are, so thank you.
Excellent point there, Mr. Chairman. The more we can cooperate, the farther we can stretch local tax dollars, it seems to me, in many instances, which is something we need to be doing. And again, not that any of us need to be reminded of it, but I think people are counting on the city government and the county government to cooperate to tackle some of these issues. I think they've been waiting for that to happen for a while, and their expectation is that we will continue to work on getting these things done. And that's also our intention, as I understand it. Why don't we see if there's any public comment on these city-county cooperation topics, and then we'll go to the next part of the meeting. If there's any members of the public that want to share any views with us about anything they've heard so far. Give them a minute. Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to the next portion of the meeting here, which I think, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rivera, that was the conclusion of the items we had outlined for our joint work session. But I'd invite you to stay to, as I believe you intend to, for the portion of the meeting where we talk about the airport, since that's our shared board. So I don't know if I am going to our Chief Operations Officer, Malia Brown, first. I think I'm going to, and then she'll give us an introduction to and the background for it. So over to you, Malia. Thank you.
Thank you, Council and Commissioners, tonight. Just wanted to, acknowledge that we have a new director, and I think the commissioners are very familiar with the director. She's been on board with the airport for since June 1st, and I wanted to introduce her and say that the board members do appreciate all the work she's done so far, and appreciate Chairman Gosar also at those meetings. So I'll turn this over to Amy Terrell, and if you have questions, there's myself as the chair and also Tracy Fletcher here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Malia. Welcome, Amy, and it's good to see you. It's good to see you, not quite in person, but you're not just a voice on the phone. Thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Council and Commissioners. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Amy Terrell, and I thought this evening, I appreciate you putting us on the agenda. I wanted to visit with you this evening just to kind of give you a brief overview of the airport and update you about what's going on out here, and hopefully become more interactive with both of you as we move forward as I start this new endeavor out here. An update on the terminal facility. We are fully operational out here. We are running commercial flights in and out of the facility. TSA is working out of the facility. We have a minor punch list we're still working through, and we're hoping to host our grand opening in the early fall. If anyone would like a tour before that time, please reach out to me. We'd be welcome to give you one. And really, we want to thank all of you at the city, the county, and the citizens for the support and partnership in building such a beautiful facility. I don't know who's had the opportunity to see it. It's really pretty impressive. Also, during this time of transition out here at the airport, we have a lot of work that we're doing. We're busy working with the FAA right now to ensure our Part 139 compliance, and what that allows for is continued commercial service out here. The FAA inspector will be coming out this Monday. We're looking forward to working with him and partnering with them as we are implementing new changes to ensure audit compliances out here. The Laramie Airport has also implemented a new training program to ensure all employees are cross-trained in all areas of the airport. We've hired Childress Accounting out of Cheyenne to join our team. He will continue to work with our local professionals, supporting the airport as we bring our books and audits up to speed to ensure compliance. We've hired Jody Shea from Pence and McMillan to support the airport with our many legal needs and professional services. We are working to identify areas of airport operations that also need support. Currently, the Laramie Airport is in a really unique position to support the city and county as we move forward. One of our visions here at the airport is to become the gateway to Laramie. We're looking forward to maximizing our opportunities to support the local businesses, citizens of Albany County, and the region. We've identified, the board and the team out here, we've identified many opportunities to create a stable and diverse streams of revenue, really with our long-term goal to be long-term sustainability. I think this is a business that we can get to where we are sustaining ourselves with these new revenue streams. As we embark on these new adventures at the airport and some of the new things we're doing, we are coming forward and we'd like to ask the county and the city for $100,000 each. This money will help support our vision, the professional services, and the capital improvement projects we have slated for this year. We have about $244,000 worth of awesome improvements that will keep us in compliance and will really improve the airport. They're all they're grant match projects. So exciting times out here at the airport, lots of growth, lots of opportunity. And really, I thank you for your time tonight. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I appreciate that overview. And again, it's good to hear from you, and in the capacity of your new role. I have driven out to the airport and checked out a few things from what I could see from the outside, and I know that probably other members have been able to go in and see some of the new features and things that you've talked about, and I think that is exciting for our community and the local governments as well. You know, we frequently think about the airport as being a real key piece of economic development efforts, and we hear that too from people that we bring in to advise us about our economic development efforts and strategies, and the airport often comes up. So thank you, and we'll see if we've got other questions here. I have to go back to the gallery screen, and I'll see if I've got any hands up here for questions for Amy about the general overview that she's given us. Okay. Well, let's see if the commissioners have a question or two that they might want to ask over there.
Mayor Weaver, we're fine. We don't have any questions at this time. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't believe that we have anything really further either. It's just nice to get that update. And we look forward to hearing more in the near future.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Malia, thank you also, and our board members out there. And we look forward to the updates and forthcoming information, perhaps later in the year.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, and I apologize, commissioners, a little bit earlier about that. You know, I tend to try to follow that agenda, and it doesn't say joint presentation, but of course that was intended to be a joint presentation to our two groups, so that people don't have to duplicate efforts for a presentation. But thank you again for being here with us. And I do really think that concludes the joint work session aspects of this. I'm going to guess that the commissioners don't want to be here for our agenda review. They're certainly welcome to be here for our agenda review and comments, but that's where we're going next on the agenda. But just check with you one more time to see if there's anything, any other further comments you'd like to make.
No, thank you, Mayor Weaver, and thanks everybody for joining with us tonight. And we only took umbrage with the commission comment that you made with Councilor Gabriel, and so we've got some things to do to get past that, but we'll get past that, I'm sure. So thank you so much, Mayor Weaver.
Oh, I've screwed up a couple of times. You know, first of all, I gave preference to our agenda format. Then I I just can't shake that title for council member Gabriel. 20 years he was over there. Can't blame me. Thank you guys. We really appreciate the commission and the county clerk and Jennifer Kern from the attorney's office, all for being here with us this evening. Good conversation, and we look forward to checking in about it again.
Have a nice night. Thanks, guys. Bye now.
Bye.
Night. Councilmember Gabriel, I hope that I didn't cut you off when you were trying to make a comment for the commissioners, but let me call on you.
No, I was just curious on the request from the airport, the $100,000. And I guess this is for Janine. When would the council consider that request?
Let's see, Councilmember Gabriel, well, let's go to our Chief Operation Officer. Malia, what do you know about that?
Mayor, we have it on the August 3rd agenda.
Okay.
And also the county has it on the August 3rd, their August 3rd agenda also.
Very good, thank you.
Was that the information that you were looking for?
You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So that'll be coming at the same time, kind of dual tracking that. Any other wrap-up comments about topics so far? I just feel like everybody's having a better time in their office areas than I am. All right, and that's probably as it should be. Let's just get right into finishing up the rest of the meeting, folks. Do you want to go into agenda review, or do you want to do comments and so on first? We don't really have that on our work session. We don't really have a space for council comments, but that does seem to be how we usually do things. So I wonder if we might go for updates and comments now. Can we do that, City Clerk, since it wasn't pre?
On our agenda, Mayor, it was published on our agenda, but on our notice of joint work session, we didn't include that on the notice because it wasn't going to be part of our joint conversation.
Okay, so we're okay to move forward with
yeah,
updates and comments. All right, whoever would like to go first. Councilman, okay, these are the hands I saw up in order. I'll go to Councilmember O'Doherty and Councilmember Gabriel, then Councilmember Harrington. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember O'Doherty.
Our staff, Janine and Darren and I presented, and Monica Leiniger from ARE presented to the Mountain Towns group, the Mountain Town about carbon neutrality. And so that group is part of this ICLEI group and looking for solutions for climate. And so we had a joint presentation about how students from the sustainability class did the carbon audit, and it was good. We got to educate our peers and I think spread some good information around. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good update. Yeah, Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. Attended the Albany County Tourism Board meeting last week. They're in their new facility, 800 South 3rd, the OANW for Councilor Schuster. And they think it's going to be a very good facility for them. A lot more traffic. And of course, they were very frustrated when they moved in. They didn't have internet or phone service for 12 days. And that was right before Jubilee days, but they got things going. Lodging receipts are up 11% in June compared to June of 2019. No comparison to last year due to COVID. So things are looking up in the travel industry here in Albany County anyway. And let me think of anything else I want to add to that. Let's see, we added 2 new board members. 2 were added. One is the owner of Snowy Range Ski Area. And the other is one of the catering managers at the University of Wyoming. Their names are escaping me at this time. Anyway, 2 new board members, and that's my update.
Appreciate it, Councilor Gabriel. We saw those names, which of course I cannot remember as they came through for appointments at a previous meeting, and we thank them for their willingness to volunteer. Let's go to Councilmember Harrington, sorry. And then I'll go to you, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 2 quick updates for you. The first is from the Pilot Hill board. There has been an increasing issue with trespassing off of the farthest east edge of Skyline Road, Skyline Drive, which is through the gate and property owned by Mountain Cement. So if you all just happen to know a person that's using that access, ask them to please find their way back to a different access. And the Planning Commission met last night. They approved it's not a new child care facility, but sort of an increase in the number of children they can care for at 1015 South 5th Street. Again, that's already a child care facility. It's just now bumped up to the next level. And the Planning Commission also received the same housing presentation that we all received. And I think many of the members will be joining. I think maybe the majority of the commission, I would hope, is planning to join our upcoming work sessions regarding housing. And it will be a continuing conversation from the commission as well. I think they're going to hold space in their next agenda to have further discussion regarding their input on our housing plans moving forward. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. Good updates. A lot of activity on all these committees. Councilor Schuster. Then I'll go to you, Councilor.
I hate to say, I know you don't write these down, so I know it's kind of a struggle over there. Couple of them, Wyoming Territorial Park was last night. I tried to bring up the calendar events on my phone. Me and my phone don't get along real good on Google. So we have a Wyoming artist seminar coming. We are going to host it. We're going to, it'll be a lot of local there. That was our biggest thing on there. We have our parking lot resealed and striped, and it looks awful nice right now. Our director resigned, and we're going to try to find a new director probably next month is what we hope to, because the application process is out there right now. Historical Railroad Depot Board had a good Jubilee days and a lot of rental activities down there. Rentals are picking up, but we're still hundreds of rentals behind from what we were last year. On that. So we got a donation of a mannequin, and it now has a conductor suit on it, and it looks really good in the museum part. And that went on display this week. And I'm also a rifle range board member, not the liaison, but I will still give an update on that. We are still doing our the second Tuesday for orientation for new members. They have to have an orientation before they're allowed to join. Third Saturday of the month, according to the city guidelines, we are open for all personnel as long as they will shoot safely out there. We have range safety officers, which I am one of them. And let's see, sight-in season is coming up. So for, I believe it's 8 weekends after Labor Day, we will be open for Saturday, Sunday sight-in season during the big hunting thing that brings in a huge amount of revenue to Laramie and Wyoming itself. So, that's it. If anybody has questions, Brian Harrington, Councilor Harrington, I would love to ask you where the access point is from the Forestry Service roads on top, because I drove that very end road trying to see if I could see anything that said Pilot Hill access, because I heard the first trail was in, and maybe it doesn't go all the way to the top too, because I know Laramie Bike Net has a bunch of trails over there they're building. So I'd love to hear on that one sometime. Does not have to be tonight, but would love to hear about that.
Without objection from the council, I'm happy to provide people some time for a few questions here if Councilor Cumby, who's next on the list, will allow it. And I have a couple for you, Councilmember Schuster, but let's give Councilor Harrington a crack at that question.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councilor Schuster, the plan right now, the Forest Service is reworking the access from the Forest Service. There is an access already with a gate. It's just not signed that says sort of like Pilot Hill access. It's on Road 703. And it's fairly near the sort of radio towers up there. There is a trail that goes all the way from the top to the bottom. There's sort of two routes that converge on one trail at the top. So Trail 9 leaves from sort of near the, what would that be, the northeast corner of the schoolyard along the power line. You can take that most of the way up. You do have to cross like a BLM section. It gets a little weird, but there are signs. And then it hits Trail 10. These numbered trails will change over time once the trail naming strategy has been sorted out. And then the old Stone Quarry Road is another way to access Trail 10 up to the top. So I happened to take my bike up last weekend and ran into some folks on horseback who had taken Old Quarry Road, Old Stone Quarry Road up to Trail 10. And I had come up the other way, but they said it was fantastic. And that left from, they had parked at Willett, the end of Willett.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Schuster, let me ask you a couple of questions if I can, please, because they're not complicated. One question I want to ask you is rifle range memberships are holding steady, increasing?
Very much increasing. During COVID, since we have one section plus we've had 3 other land negotiation deals, so we're over 700 acres now. And our membership has grown by about 30%, so not just holding steady or not slight growth. Between student, which is University of Wyoming, LCCC, Wyotech, and even, I hate to say, an 18-year-old senior in high school that can possess a rifle. We have student memberships, we have individual memberships, we have family memberships, and then we have corporate memberships. And I got the archery club of 4-H a corporate membership so that they could come out. We have brand new archery targets out there, and we're over probably about 850 memberships right now, including family and everything. So a little over 1,000 participants.
Appreciate that. My other question for you is about the depot. I really like the depot, and I think most of our council members and frankly a whole bunch of people in Laramie really like that institution. And when you made your comment about rentals being on the upswing also and having a comeback, but I just wonder if you can give us just a little bit of a picture of how they're feeling about their overall financial condition, because I know that hurt them to have the inability to operate like they normally would over the course of last year. Are they feeling like they're in a pretty good position for recovery?
We are getting by the skin of our teeth. We are not going to go bankrupt or anything like that, but we've had to dip into some funds that we really didn't ever want to have to dip into. So we feel the outlook looks a little bit better, but with new strains and people worrying and everything, it was before COVID, we had bookings 3 years in advance. We'll just joke about it. This year, it was supposed to be on graduation. We had 5 nursing students that split the cost so they could have their graduation party at the historical Railroad Depot, and they had booked it 2 years in advance. So, I mean, there were, during the month of December, we usually book over 50% of the days, even during the week, for Christmas parties. And you know how hard that got hit this year. So we basically lost everything for about 6 months. So very, very, very tough. Are we stable? Yes. Are we rich? No, not by any means at all. Because we've done a lot of remodeling and some stuff like that. Have a miniature kitchen with no stove, but plenty of appliances besides that for people that want to come in and have it catered. We have an area for them to prep food. So it was very nice on that. And we hope to do better.
Well, I appreciate that. I just think it's something for the council to just bear in mind. That is a really popular location for events and things like that. And the city of Laramie even utilizes it from time to time. So thank you, council, for indulging that. But I wanted to get a little bit more of a picture on that. And Councilor Schuster, we're still waiting to get an update on the big boy when you have one about whether or not they're going to do a stop through.
It's on test runs right now. It's not coming through Laramie yet. It went south into Colorado, but it has its first initial test run of this year. When it goes through, I will make sure everybody knows.
All right. Thank you for that. Council Member Cumby, thanks for waiting. I appreciate that. I did want to ask those questions, but it's over to you.
There we go.
Yep.
Sorry about that. I'd like to make a comment briefly before I give my report. And I had some Airbnb guests, a couple, last week or the week before, and they were avid mountain bikers. And knowing this, I provided them all of the trail maps that are now available about Pole Hill, all the trails. They went up there, spent the day, loved it, and have rebooked with me for another 4 days in October because they want to come out here. So my guests were very happy, and so happy they are coming back here from Kansas to do that again. So, yay. What I'd like to report on is, the continuation of work related to our proclamation and goal for our county and city to be at 70% vaccination. I serve as the council liaison to Interagency Vaccine Initiative Task Force. And this is probably the busiest task force I have ever worked with. The main committee meets twice a week. And then we now have 2 subcommittees, one on initiatives, which thank you, Councilor O'Doherty, for your volunteering to help with that. And the second committee is on publicity and promotion. And I'm serving on both of those, so that we wind up meeting anywhere between 4 and 5 times a week. We've accomplished a lot in the last 7 to 10 days, and in order for us to proceed, we need to identify an authorizing agent for all of the activities that are going on. And after speaking with Dr. Harris, she first applauds the efforts of the county and the city. And she says that they are thinking about similar things for the state. They have agreed that the Wyoming Public Health, Albany County Public Health will serve as our authorizing agent. And we are currently working with 2 designated nonprofit that will both receive and distribute funds related to these incentives. Jody Guerin has certainly done an excellent job of leadership, and as has Trey Sherwood. And our goals are to have things ready for promotion by the 15th. So within the next 2 weeks, we're writing up the flyers. We're developing large gift packages. The city has provided money for incentives, and now Wyoming Public Health has also provided money for both incentives and publicity. So it's really a very unique situation of many people in leadership within our community coming together for this effort. And it seems that our timing is very good when you see the rate of infection across the nation related to the Delta virus. And in the last week, it's tripled yet again. And I think the more prepared we can be, the better we're going to do, so that we don't wind up suffering personal hardship and economic hardship to the community. So I'm very happy to be a part of this project, and I think it's a good one for the city on a number of levels. Are there any questions?
Questions for Council Member Cumby? I see one from Council Member Gabriel. Go for it.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was just curious, sharing about your experience at WHAM, maybe Councilor O'Doherty as well. Any updates on that?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Gabriel. I made a choice not to go to WHAM because of concern about the virus. And so Councilor O'Doherty graciously attended, and she can give you the update. She's got some very interesting things, I think, to update us about. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, if you want to wait until everybody's done, then I can give that report.
Yes, we can do that. That makes sense to me. Other board and commission updates, Councilmember Gabriel?
I just wanted to follow up then and look forward to Aaron's report. Just had a question concerning maybe sending some flowers on behalf of the city for Senator Enzi's passing, or some kind of something of notation that we can send as a former mayor of the city of Gillette, if we could do something to honor that.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. And I had hoped to have the presence of mind to remember to say something tonight about that. And what can be said. We regret the unfortunate circumstances and the untimely passing of former Senator Enzi. I mean, the state took a hit there. Whatever you might feel or agree or disagree with in terms of Senator Enzi's positions, he was certainly always for Wyoming. And I had probably like most of us, number of occasions to meet him. He was always really cordial and willing to talk to anybody about anything. And I think certainly proved himself over many, many years to be a dedicated public servant and served the state as our senator. And that was just a very, very unfortunate piece of news. I saw the city clerk had raised her hand to maybe provide some information about that. Go ahead, city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. After notification this morning from Councilor Somerville, we did make contact with former Councilor Klaus Hansen, and he has agreed to send flowers from the council, the city of Laramie, and himself. So we will be putting that together at least to send to former Senator Enzi's family.
Thank you for that, and our thanks go to our former council member and colleague and friend Klaus Hansen, and we appreciate his willingness to do that very, very much. That kind of old school approach that folks like former Senator Enzi and our former council member Klaus Hansen have about things is missed more and more every day. Other updates, I have one for the council about Civil Service Commission, which I'll keep short, but I want to make sure everybody else has had an opportunity for updates before we talk about WHAM. Okay, quick update about the Civil Service Commission. We met. We had an opportunity to go over the business for the meeting as the Police Civil Service Commission. Chief Stalder informed the commission about the roster of candidates available for potential placement as members of the Laramie Police Department. Out of a very large number of initial applicants, it was screened down to a smaller list, and then after the qualification exams, it was an even smaller list. We do have a trainee that is coming into the process, and a couple of other folks in the pipeline. Chief Stalder informs me that if everything works out with those folks, our staffing for our Laramie Police Department will still be under our recommended levels. I think we're still looking to be 3 members short of a full complement of our recommended staffing levels for the police department. But we do have some highly qualified candidates in the works, and one individual that's beginning the full training process. And if I've forgotten any aspects of that, I apologize, but I think that's the gist of the information for the council on the Police Civil Service Commission. For the Fire Civil Service Commission, we had an update from the chief, and I'm happy to inform you all that Chief Johnson will be continuing on as the chief of our fire department for the near future, and we hope for perhaps beyond the near future, and we're grateful for his service to the city of Laramie. Chief, I don't know if I'm forgetting any other pertinent information about that, but since you're here, you can remind me with regards to staffing levels or anybody we have in the pipeline for fire service.
Mayor, the other 2 agenda items that we had was certifying our recruit list and certifying our officers promotional list, and then the petition for the employment for the H issue. So that was it. That was all our agenda. So
I appreciate that. The commission considered those items and went along with the recommendations from our chief. And again, we're just glad that you're going to continue on with us. Some important discussions going on right now about cooperation around EMS services. We touched on them tonight, and I think we're going to need your leadership abilities on that. So we appreciate it. Thanks for that addition.
Thank you, Mayor.
You betcha. And that additional information is appreciated as well. So that's it for your Civil Service Commission update, council members. Let's go over to Councilmember O'Doherty to talk to us a little bit about highlights and important points from WHAM.
So I wasn't there for the whole meeting. I attended most of Thursday. When I came in, Senator Enzi was speaking, and one of the things that he pointed out that he was most proud of in serving Gillette was securing water into the future. So he recommended that cities secure their water assets. So I think he'd be right on board with what we're doing. And another thing he recommended was when people come and complain about things, the city services that they should have or city amenities they should have, to rope them in as volunteers to help make those things happen. I thought that was pretty cool. The WHAM passed, or the members passed all the resolutions except for 2021, I think it was 05. There were 2 resolutions that Rollins put in about derelict buildings, and they felt like the second one was putting the cart before the horse. So that wasn't recommended by the resolutions committee, and it also wasn't approved by the body. And the other one was the 2021-06 about net metering. And that wasn't, that's asking for the full retail value of for net metering charges. And because cities are on both sides of that equation, because some cities provide have that as one of their municipal services, they didn't feel like that was appropriate for the body. And so again, the resolutions committee didn't recommend it, and then the body didn't pass it. But all the other resolutions passed. And then we didn't have our dinner guests from Biotech, but we praised them, and Janine got a plaque, and we need to do something sometime and give them their plaque. So and Janine and Nancy were there longer than I was, so they may have more to add.
Councilmember Authority, let me just thank you for representing our city council at WHAM, and thank you for those updates. And I appreciate that reminder. I would ask the city manager and the city clerk to provide any other updates from other discussions from WHAM that they might like to at this time. City manager?
Mayor, nothing from me. I think that's a pretty robust list. Maybe just one quick thing. I did have a conversation with the Mayor Cheyenne at the regional meeting. I understand that they may be trying to recruit a builder of homes that has a novel production technology. So I'll be following that. I'll keep you guys up to speed. But having that sort of novel building and production technology near us might be useful as we consider our housing issues. And then the other thing I would let you know from the region meeting is that they did elect our mayor, Paul Weaver, to represent WHAM Region 1. So congratulations, Mayor Weaver.
That's what you get for not being there. Okay, that's news to me, folks, but we'll follow up. We'll follow up accordingly. That's it. That's a real treat. But that's okay. I will say this quickly. I think WHAM has been working pretty hard over the last year and a half for the interests of cities and towns, and I've been pleased with what I've seen out of them. Really interesting update about novel housing construction techniques, City Manager. Keep us in the loop about that. That is very much of interest, as you know, to this council. Councilmember O'Doherty, I saw you.
Yeah, can I just add one more thing? So when I talked to the engineering companies that were there and told them that we were going to have a RFQ about our aquifer protection. So I got some names to make sure they're on our list of vendors. And I also just want to say WHAM does provide us good services because we have a venue for those kinds of things. Our city clerk gets to meet with other city clerks right at that convention, and so I do feel like we're getting good service, that and our membership to the National League of Cities. So I feel like and they're not raising the fees. It's going to be the same this year as last year. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate those follow-up questions, and I'll add a comment too. I feel very much heard by WHAM over the course of this last year, and some of the advocacy that they provided at some of the most recent legislative sessions, and where they've been coming from, and I've appreciated it very much. Yeah, City Manager.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I should mention one other thing. I did host the City Manager Administrator meeting, and I wanted to share two things that came out of that meeting that I thought you might find of interest as a council. One is we had representation there from towns including like Lovell, Jackson, Cody, and larger communities, as you would suspect. But what I heard from my colleagues is every one of them expressed concern about housing. So I want to tell you and reiterate to you what we believe to be true, that housing is a regional and now very much a statewide problem, and even in our smaller communities. And then the other observation that they all shared was that despite COVID over 2020, that they had seen slight upticks in sales tax, which I thought was really interesting. And I share that only because it seems counterintuitive, right? When COVID started, like we locked down spending and we did all these proactive measures thinking we would see revenue decline. And in fact, we saw it continue its, slight upward progression here in Laramie, and that appears to be consistent across Wyoming. In fact, some of the communities saw big gains in sales tax, particularly where they were tourist-based increases, they think. So some interesting post-COVID data to share.
Well, that is interesting and surprising. And of course, I think I'd seen some of that relayed in some reporting and some information provided by the state. Also, I certainly surprised. Didn't see that coming. That's really interesting, and maybe some patterns and some further information might emerge later for us to get a better handle on that, because it does surprise me very much. Thank you for hosting and chairing the city manager's portion of the WAM conference as well. That's great to hear, and those other data points are good. Nancy, City Clerk, what would you share? What did you have for us?
One of the main things that I wanted to mention is, I was sitting at our table for next year's convention for much of this year's summer convention. So I got to have a lot of conversations, but I wanted to note that Scott Larson from Albany County Tourism Board came over for all of Thursday and sat at the table to allow Assistant City Manager, and myself to attend some of the sessions. So that I just wanted to say thank you to Scott. That was very much appreciated.
Yeah. Well, and thank you, City Clerk, City Manager, and Councilmember O'Doherty for going and for that good report. Lots of interesting stuff out of that. Kind of wishing that I hadn't felt apprehensive about going, but I feel like I got the highlights. So thank you very much. Any other updates or reports on anything, folks? Okay, why don't we have a look at our agenda? And there's one thing I'd like to talk about for tomorrow's procedure, and it's simply this. How would you, council members, like to approach the questions? We're going to ask our applicants for appointment the same questions, which we determined at the last meeting when we talked about this, right? We'll ask them all the same questions. Would you like to alternate amongst council members the asking of those questions? Or would you like me to ask them all the questions? I mean, we'll alternate between who answers which question first and so on and so forth. But would you all like to take a turn at asking questions? Would you like me to ask the questions? I don't care. It'd just be good to get it figured out now so we can jump right into it. Councilmember Schuster, what do you think?
I would love to see you ask all the questions. That way, one person, one tone of voice, done. That way, I don't want to use the word nobody gets favorites, but no, I would like it to come from you. Hopefully same tone of voice so that it's to them from our mayor.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I'll do my best. I won't be any nicer or less nice with any of them over anybody else. How about that? Okay. Councilmember Doherty.
But you're just asking the question once or repeating it if someone asks, correct? You're asking the one question, the first one, something like introduce yourself. And then maybe we could ask our city clerk to do the randomized thing like she does with, it seems like you do that sometimes, right? City clerk, where you randomize. And so maybe the mayor could have a list of 3 different random orders of those folks.
I have an idea about that, but I'm going to go to Councilor Schuster. He raised his hand.
Mine is not about that, so I don't know if you want to finish off that, or I know we're going to prioritize them too. So I wondered, is there going to be a voting thing? Do we send it somewhere as an email, or how we're going to do that? Because I know at the end of tomorrow night, and maybe it doesn't come in until we think about it and it comes in on next Tuesday, but I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I saw the city clerk had an answer for it, but just to let's wrap up the last part of that discussion and see if everybody's okay with it. The way I'm understanding it's going to work is we'll have question number 1. I will ask question number 1, and then I will turn to the city clerk to provide us with whoever's been randomly selected to answer it the first time. and then whoever the second time. And if anybody needs a reminder about the question at any point in that process, I'm happy to restate it. And I think that's the approach we can take for each question. Does that sound agreeable to everybody? City Clerk, does that make perfect sense to you? Okay, good. Then maybe City Clerk, you'd like to address Council Member Schuster's question about after the interviews, what does the council need to look forward to?
Mayor, thank you. Right now we have the list all prepared for the ranked choice voting. So the plan is we will email that out to the council and give you until Monday at 10 a.m. to return those to the city clerk via email or in person if that works for you. And then we'll tally up all the votes according to preference and have those numbers ready to go for the Tuesday meeting.
Questions about that? Councilmember O'Doherty.
We have to be really clear if we're ranking 1 is our number 1 favorite and 8 is our least favorite, or the other way around. So if you'll just put that on the ballot so that everybody's clear, and then nobody gets to do ties on their own ballot. Like, oh, I want this person, and everybody else is a tie for second, because that would really mess up the math.
Right. 8 is your top preference, and we do have that on the sheet along with a summary of how ranked choice voting works. So hopefully that'll be clear as mud to everyone. And then we formed an Excel spreadsheet to help us with the preference voting ranking and stuff. So it is set by recognizing the 8s and tallying that for the percentages. If we get 50% preference, then the voting is concluded, but if not, then there's a whole process to go through from there, which is kind of explained in that sheet, and we can go over that more tomorrow as well if you'd like.
Councilmember Schuster, and then I'll go to the Vice Mayor. Councilmember Schuster.
Give the Vice Mayor, because I've already spoke twice, and then I'll speak.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor.
So, Nancy, is this exactly what we did with Phoebe, or is this something new now?
That's a great question, Vice Mayor. We were trying to figure out exactly how the process worked with Phoebe Stoner when Vicki Henry resigned. It appears like it wasn't an exact ranked choice voting like what we are working with this time around. It was more, Andy Somerville is shaking her head. It looked like they gave a ranking 8 to 1 or 6 to 1. And then all of those votes were tallied. So you just saw the number of votes that each person received, that total value. And then from there, the council appointed. Is that correct, Councilor Somerville?
Somerville, did you want to add some background for us?
No, that's correct. It was ranked choice in that you ranked the people from 8 to 1, and that assigned their point value, and the highest point value got the first motion. It was very simple. And if I can just add to the comment, I thought that's what we were doing. I wouldn't support doing a complicated ranked choice for this.
And I also, if I could just continue.
Please, Vice Mayor. Yes, please.
I also recall we are allowed zeros.
Yes.
You are allowed zeros. It may not be beneficial in the long run, but you are allowed to do a 0,
Thank you.
So my understanding, Council, and I'm going to go to you, Councilmember Schuster. I know you're waiting, but I just think we need to be as clear as we can be tonight about this before, is that we're going to replicate that process basically exactly, and we should not get too caught up in the labeling of it. It's a form of ranked choice voting, and the reason I believe that we agreed to do that is because we felt like it was the fairest for our applicants, and also possibly for us in the process. And so as Councilmember Somerville described it is how I believe we're approaching it. City Clerk, I hope that was your understanding as well, in terms of how the scoring would work and what that would mean for who was going to get the first motion forward and so forth. That all sounds exactly like where we settled at our last discussion here. So I think we're all on the same page there. Over to you for follow-up questions or anything about that, though, City Clerk.
Mayor, I think we're prepared. We have a summary sheet to bring you those totals. So I think we're ready to go.
Okay. All right.
If I could see that ahead of time, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. My biggest question is I thought I heard something about a 50% vote. And I know we're voting with 8 people. So will they be required to have 5 votes or 4 votes? 5, thank you. I just wanted that to make sure that we understood it, because everything we've had here in council chambers is a tie was a loss. So I just wanted to make sure we were all perfectly on the same page. Thank you.
That good question. And council members and staff, I thank you for your patience, but the more we iron these things out now, the better it's going to be for the rest of this process. I think we're all together. 8 is your top choice, and so forth. And those scores will be aggregated, and that will determine who receives the first motion for consideration to the appointment. You can choose not to provide a score. You might want to consider the math of that. You know, obviously you're free to make your own choice. But I believe we all understand the process. It sounds to me like it is substantially similar to the one used in, I believe it was 2017, to make the prior appointment when we had a vacancy. City Manager, I note that you've been here listening to this conversation. I'll give you an opportunity for any input. Okay, just listening along. Good. So I think we're clear. Sounds like the City Clerk is clear. I believe that the City Council is clear on it as well, and we're clear on the questions. And I appreciate the time given for that topic. But we wanted to be in concert with each other as close as we could. The Vice Mayor requested the form ahead of time, if possible, and I assume that the City Clerk can make that available for anybody else that has the same request. All right. Any other follow-up on that before we do the rest of the agenda, and look forward to getting out of here since we're going to be here tomorrow? All right. How about anything for the agenda? And I'm sorry if I missed anybody's questions. Pipe up now. There weren't a lot of questions in your from your mayor and vice mayor at the agenda review meeting. I will say item number 18 is subject to possibly being postponed depending on the length of time the other items on the agenda take. We weren't really sure if we wanted to pull it or not. We thought we'd just see how things go. It might get bumped because it's not time sensitive. Hopefully everybody's okay with that choice. All right. I see some thumbs. Okay. Any Councilmember O'Doherty? Yeah.
I would like to bump that item so that the new council member has time to digest that. And well, I don't know. I guess we could still discuss it and then they could decide.
I mean, that's not an unreasonable request, Councilmember O'Doherty, and that was some of what the vice mayor and I were kind of kicking around. We weren't really sure what we wanted to do with that. We could move it if that's the recommendation from the rest of you. We thought we'd leave it on there because there's a substantial possibility it'll be postponed. But we really wanted to check with the rest of you before making that choice. So if you feel strongly about it, we can move it, or we can just see what happens depending on the length of discussion for the other items. Am I remembering that right, Vice Mayor? We weren't quite sure, so we thought we'd leave it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Somerville.
Mayor, I would just say I agree with Councilor O'Doherty. Sorry, I'm trying to make your last name into one word with no apostrophe. Just that it might be prudent to just bump it 2 weeks so that the new council member can at least take a look at it. That's a big document. And they're already going to have quite a bit of stuff to prep on that agenda. Well, I guess the candidates are, because we won't know until the beginning of that agenda who's going to take the council seat. And the other stuff is time sensitive and probably more of a priority for the candidates.
Okay, let's pull it. Let's pull it. I'm convinced if there isn't any objection. City Clerk, we'll go ahead and remove that because I think the case has been made that it can wait. One thing of note and a positive and really good thing is a substantial donation made from Mr. Butcher, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, for the skate park efforts and the Friends of Laramie Skate Park, and he's been placed at the top of the agenda. My understanding is our assistant city manager is going to make sure that he can join us for the call, and we just really want that opportunity to acknowledge that generosity and to say thanks and give him an opportunity to hear what I think will be comments from folks from Friends of Laramie Recreation. Josh, who comes and talks to us about the skate park, whose last name escapes me right now, but we all know, and he's been really important in that project. And so that'll be a good thing to kick off that meeting with. And we're, of course, grateful, and we'll want to hear from Mr. Butcher and tell him thanks. He may not have a lot to say. He may be embarrassed, but we're still going to say, hey, this is a big deal, and thank you very much. Any other items that are making you curious? Got some appointments to our boards. We have the follow-up to our presentation tonight. A renewal of our EMS services for the University of Wyoming, which the chief explained for my benefit at the agenda review meeting, is for the games and events, and is a standard renewal for those services. Councilmember Gabriel, did I see you raise your hand? Go ahead.
Just curious, City Manager, I'm just assuming the allocation to the airport is something that you had planned on?
Yes, Mayor and Council, it is consistent with past years in terms of amount and process. So it's, it was anticipated in the budget.
We had wanted to give Amy Terrell the chance to get up to speed. She had been on vacation at a time that didn't really line up well with our council schedule in terms of hearing the presentation that we heard tonight, and get that out of the way before we went forward with our contract renewal with them. So that's kind of the way that worked out. I don't see anybody else popping up a hand. We've decided to move that agenda item number 18, and we do have an executive session. So that's going to be, well, we'll see. It could be a bear of a meeting, or it could go real smooth. It's up to us, folks. But looks like we know what our agenda is going to be. Any other questions or follow up from it? All right. It's good to hear from YDOT. That's always an interesting presentation. And it was very interesting to hear from the commissioners. And my personal thanks to those of you on those committees. Thanks a lot. City Manager, did you have a hand? Oh, okay. Yep. We all have hands. We don't necessarily always want them to be seen. Okay, well, I think we're at the end of the work session. Thank you all very much. It's a good one. Have a good night.